Hello and welcome to another episode of Wednesdays with WV. On this episode, I'm not going to talk much about the guest that I'm going to introduce. I'll just keep it to saying it's Ravichandran Ashwin. I think that should suffice. Morning, Ashwin.
Morning,
Nice to
sir.
see you.
Thank you, sir. Same here.
Okay. We'll cut away with most of the details as to how you started because there's nothing much left for people to know. But what I'm curious is about the functional change that you made from being an opening batter to bowler. Was it voluntary or was it dictated by circumstances?
So some things happen in life, and some things are voluntary. But I think where there is a natural force and a natural direction to be taken, and then you also end up embracing it and going ahead with it, is where magic happens. I think mine is a classic case of such a magic happening in my life, because there were times in my life where I didn't know which direction to take. I was in no man's land. However, I think a hand of destiny or karma, whatever you'd like to call it, however one terms it to be, happened in my life, and that was when I started taking up to spin bowling. I largely wanted to remain a batsman. Batting was always the forefront of my thinking, but just one of those days where my mom turned up and said, why are you just standing in the ground and not doing anything? You might as well bowl spin if you can't bowl seam up. So I started bowling spin. I loved bowling in gully cricket. I used to bowl a lot with tennis ball and all that. I loved it. It came naturally to me. So I just extended that attribute of joy into professional cricket, and as things would have, I started enjoying it. I started getting results out of it, and then I applied more logic to it. Having been a batsman all through my life, it just helped me understand batting a lot better, batsman a lot better. So it's helped me in good stead, not bad. It's given me something in life. It's given me a lot more than what I expected in life. Yeah.
So, in my words, a mother not wanting a son being lazy is what produced all this.
Not really. Actually, I think a selfish mother, I would say. Because, the day, I'll just explain the day a little bit. She used to work at Unilever, and time is very premium at Unilever. She never got, I would actually say my mother was the dad and father was the mom. So it was a very different sort of a household that I came through. My mother was doing the hard yards at a MNC in those days, and Unilever hardly permitted. She used to. I remember working on Saturdays and Sundays through and throughout. There were several weeks where I wouldn't see her when I went to bed in the night, and then she used to turn up. My dad used to go and pick her up and come late night. One of those days, I said, "I'm playing a game, and why don't you come?" And she used to come to a lot of games before she became more professionally ambitious, if I may say so. And then one of those days, I just called her and said, I asked her, why don't you come for the game? And she turned up for the game. They had the office at Foreshore Estate. She turned up for the game, and when she turned up for the game, I was just standing around the field because my turn to bat had finished. And she was watching me from the galleries, and I was just going around the field, not bowling, not doing anything. And when I came after the game and I asked, how did you enjoy the game? She said, what's there to enjoy? I just watched your friends play, friends bowl, but you didn't do anything. Which is when we had that extended conversation and said, you might as well bowl, no? Because I couldn't get to see anything. What will you do for the rest of the day if your batting is over? So yeah, it was that reason why I started bowling spin from the next day at the nets. And yeah, things turned around forever.
The shift to becoming a bowler is hard work. How difficult was it just initially? Because other way around, generally it's considered a little bit easy because pitches are good for batting. It's a batsman-friendly game. All sorts of reasons float around. But how was it in your case?
No, even though I took up to spin bowling, I didn't entirely become a spin bowler straight away. So I was still batting. Batting was at the forefront of my career spin, and I kept batting, and then I started slowly. People started recognizing that I had some skill as a spin bowler, and they started promoting me as a spin bowler as well. Because I ended up doing both of it, I didn't have to entirely switch to being a bowler. But one fine day, 3-4 years down the line as a spin bowler, when I traveled that journey, it took me to a place where I saw myself, okay, which direction am I headed? Am I more of a bowler or more of a batter? But there was no shortage of joy when I was trying to bowl spin. I felt like my intellectual candle was burning even more higher when I was a bowler than when I was batting. I then said, okay, let me just prioritize my bowling a little bit more this season, because I had a couple of seasons in professional cricket where I found myself making like 300, 350 runs, picking up 18, 19 wickets. And I just felt like I was more of a cricketer who was doing this and that. One fine day I would deliver with the ball. One fine day I would deliver with the bat. And then it gave me a lot of joy. People started appreciating me because I was not a redundant resource. I used to deliver either way. But I felt like I was not specializing anyway. And there was one day tournament in TNCA, the VIP trophy was happening. I had made like 450s on that bounce. Won games for my club side. I picked up 3 wickets, 2 wickets very often. I ended up with 15 wickets in 5 games. But I was not even close to being considered for a selection for TN. Where a lot of people said this boy could be considered, I was not even close. They picked up a regular offie who had picked up like 5 or 6 wickets in the entire competition. He was taken, he was drafted in. That competition got over. And the next season, I realized I was heading nowhere being this or that. So I wanted to, deliver like a 40 or a 50 wicket season with the ball for people to consider me as an off spinner. Even though I had become an off spinner and people rated me as an off spinner, they didn't see me as a specialist off spinner to break the cut into any serious game of cricket. And they saw me as a utility resource at club level, which is when I wanted to break that whole monotony and wanted to throw myself into the whole circus. And I had a really good season as a bowler the next year.
Let's talk about the metamorphosis of Ashwin as a bowler. Where was it the first acceptance came as far as your bowling skills were concerned?
Yeah, like I said, this 18 wicket and a 350 run season wasn't just cutting ice. I had you know very well the club cricket in Chennai pays you pretty well, and I was drawing a grand 15,000 rupees at that point of time per month, and when I picked up 350, when I made 350 runs and picked up 18, 19 wickets, I got a 10% hike on my salary, which was a huge deal for me. I was doing my engineering at that point of time. And for me to come all the way 35 kilometers, it cost me a fair amount of money. So I used to be happy with that. And then I realized suddenly, I used to play for Chemplast. I realized some of the players who were on the top of the leaderboard used to have a leaderboard culture at Chemplast. They were making like 50-60% headways in terms of increment. And all those cricketers were Ranji Trophy cricketers. They were playing for the state or they were professionals who came from other states, which is when I realized I was probably being another mediocre cricketer who was an add-on. I was not being the first name on the sheet of any team 11. I was being like a 7th or an 8th member or a 9th member in the team sheet that was being written. And I wanted to write myself at the top of the team list. When they picked up a team, I wanted to be the first person on the team sheet. So I said, what do I do to be that? Everything in my life was very logical. I don't know for what joy it was. Maybe I don't know if it came from my engineering background. I put logic to it and I said, I'm not probably the cream of those cricketers. Okay, do I make 800 runs or do I take 40 wickets? Which do I want to prioritize? I wanted to make 800 runs. My heart said make 800 runs. But my head said even if I made 800 runs, I wouldn't break into the Ranji Trophy side. I had this conversation with my dad sitting across the table and I said I wanted to be an off-spinner batsman. He just lost his marbles. He said, what are you doing? You've been a batsman all your life and you want to become an off-spinner who can bat. I said, look, if I make 800 runs, 900 runs, and if I make it for 2-3 seasons, I might still not get picked because Sadagop and Ramesh is still opening the batting for TN, and Badrinath is batting at 3, and I don't see myself breaking into that team. And then we had a huge argument, and then I settled, as always in my house, I was the only son. Any debate eventually ended up to me winning the battle. And I said, this is what I want to do. And they supported me eventually. And the very next season, as like I said, the turn of fate and destiny would have, the very next season that I tried, I picked up 40 wickets because I started spending more time. I used to start at 3 in the afternoon and finish keeping the ball down only at 6 in the evening. I wouldn't bat the entire day. I would go next day in the morning, bat, and repeat the same course all over again. And I started realizing that I really loved bowling. And my love for bowling has never stopped ever since.
To digress a little bit, what is it like pursuing engineering as well as professional cricket simultaneously?
It was hell. All I can say is it was hell. Every time I went to college after finishing playing a league game or something, I used to go. I would have missed probably a week's classes, and that used to be going on and on and on because league cricket had 6-7 games going on for a battle for a period of time, and that meant it almost ate into 6-7 weeks of your college time. Of course, I used to get attendance, but whenever I went back to college, I used to be like, some outlier. Some of my friends used to say, hey, you're back. I thought you discontinued your course. And sometimes, you used to hear staff telling you, oh, you're back. Nice to see you. You had a grand 1% attendance in the last semester. So those are all gimmicks you had to get on with. And it was very hard. Even though I used to laugh it off and smile it off, I had to catch up on courses. And when I went to labs for lab exams, I used to feel the pinch. And there were several comments from, they're absolutely not wrong at all, but there were several comments from the staff in the college that if you're so interested in the game, that's what you must be doing. You mustn't be coming back to college. So literally, I used to pull all Sundays in college. I used to go and try to catch up. But it was literally there was no time clock for me. I used to do 12-hour days, 14-hour days, 16-hour days, and it never was enough. How much ever I tried to catch up, it was never enough. But what it did was create a quiet sense of resolve inside me. So I was wasting all this time on the ground just so that I could suffer going back to college. A mainstream 18, 19-year, 20-year-old child, 20-year-old adult at that point of time was going to college, having a decent life, having a good Saturday, Sunday off, which I wasn't having. So I said, okay, I love doing what I'm doing. I love playing cricket, but at the same time, I must make sure that I'm using this time very well, because when I go back, I'm not having it easy. So I might as well use these 3 days to be there all the time. When I go there to the ground, I'd be like, I want to bowl all the time. When I get a chance to bat, I want to bat all the time. So I would leave no stone unturned. Eventually, I felt like it reached to a point where I was excelling. I was grabbing the headline after every 3 days, and it sort of became an addiction. I wanted to see myself catching the headline at the end of every single league game. So this was, and I don't know how to coin this, whether it was sadistic pleasure that I was enjoying on the ground, or whether it was a very, a straight rooted person who wanted excellence and just targeted it all my life. Either which ways, I had no complaints, because it really, pushed me forward as a cricketing professional.
Going through hell, as you put it, was worth it, wasn't it? When you made your debut in first-class cricket and five first came in bunches.
It did. It did. It was all worth the time. Like I said, uh, most teachers in your life are not the ones who smile on your face and tell you what you want to hear. I think that is a very generational thing, and I find it as a common trait amongst the younger lot that I'm seeing now. They want to hear what they want to hear. I make no mistake, when I had so many critics telling me I never, for some reason, I never got to hear what I wanted to hear as a child, or as a teen, or as an adult. I continue to hear what I don't want to hear even today. But the beauty of not hearing what you want to hear is that the mirror is all around you. So you only have one direction to head in. You know that people are constantly telling you what you're not, and you have to really push your scales up. For me, all those people that told me and showed me the mirror those days that I really was aspiring to be this cricketer that I am today, is I just want to turn around and say thank you so much, because I don't consider themselves as even doing 1% harm to me, because if they hadn't done it then, I wouldn't be the person that I am here. Every person that walks your path and tells you what's wrong with you, and tells you why you're failing, are aware. I mean, we're not people that I really enjoyed having conversations with then, but they are the people that I consider as foremost teachers today. I end up telling my daughters, I'm a father of 2 young kids, and I tell them, what is bitter to the tongue is always best for the stomach. So what is bitter for the ear, for your 2 ears that you're hearing, is probably a lesson that you want to reflect upon later on and try and work on. So I think I'd like to thank every one of those people who gave me a hard time, because they were the best tutors I had.
Climbing the ladder and earning the India cap did not take too long, relatively, like it did for others in your case.
No, in fact, I'm talking to one of those tutors right now, and that's why even today I have conversations, very deep conversations. I am a very deep thinker with my wife a lot about how, without even my knowledge, that my stint with you as a coach in my formative years is one of the most cherished times for me, because I ended up applying all that I learned with you throughout the rest of my career and found great results. I don't know, this has to be a real cosmic connect. Not necessarily everybody's method will work for every other person in this world, but it certainly worked like magic for me. It was a great connection that I had. I still remember that conversation that you had with me in the year 2008, 9, if I'm not wrong, or maybe 9 or 8, 9. I think it was 8, 9 of Ranji Trophy, and I had come back. I had a great first year for Tamil Nadu. Then I had a middling second year because I faced an injury, and then it was middling. Then the third year was okay. It was not great, but it was very balanced. And I think it might have been, I'm not sure if it's the dawn of the break of the third or the fourth season. It might have been the break of the third season that you came up to me and said, Ashwin, there are two ways your life can go here. You either take off from here and you don't look back, or you just settle down here and become another routine first-class cricketer. I'm not saying you won't be a good first-class cricketer, but you will settle down here. And I see this year very, very important. It's a year of stagnation, or it's a year where you really plummet forward. And I came back. I had a second-hand Santro at that time. I still remember very clearly. And the AC of the car wouldn't work. It was just a fan. And I was listening to the radio after having this conversation, listening to one of my favorite songs. I realized I wasn't listening to that song. My brain was still stuck in that moment where you said that to me, and I was bowling in the nets. And I kept thinking, why did this man say this? Why did this man say this? Does he like me, or does he not like me, or does he want somebody else to come into the team? Does he not? All these thoughts were going in my head. And it's very natural because as a cricketer, you're taught all your life to not trust people who come and tell you anything. There is a massive insecurity issue that as a cricketer, because people always want your spot. They are not there to do good for you, and very few people come and do good for you. And I was thinking. Eventually, I got home. Chepauk to West Mambalam, where I live, is about 20-25 minutes drive. And I had not listened to one line of music that was running on radio. And I was only thinking about you and what is your intention, what might have happened. I came, had my food, and then I was just sitting in my hall and thinking, which is when I realized there is not 1 inch of a gain for you. You didn't have to say that to me. And the thought process that I was going through was very negative. And I needed to see why am I seeing this way of it going downhill? Why is this human brain thinking that it has to go downhill? Why am I not choosing the first line that I said, that you could plummet ahead this season? And from then on, whenever I had a doubt or an insecurity in my life for the next 20 years, I've made sure I've only looked at the positives and kept the negatives down. And a very crucial time in my life, and I did plummet ahead after that year. Because I chose not to look at the downside, only look at the upside, because you had given me two choices. It's not like you came and said I had to go down, but I chose. The human mind is very tricky. It chose to look at the negative aspect and forgot the positive aspect. And till today, I only look at the positive aspect, and I would always attribute it to that day.
Thank you, Ashwin. And then not many realize this, but the real challenge in your career would have been overcoming the challenges you had, because you're not naturally talented as far as athleticism is concerned. Overcoming that bit must have been the biggest challenge, wasn't it?
I would say it is one of the most easiest sacrifices that I've done in my life. I've sacrificed a lot, worked hard on it, but I would never hold it against me, or I would never give it as an excuse. The reason I say that is because the game is something that I love so much. If you love something so much, anything that comes along with it that you have to do for being relevant in the game, it's just a natural extension, right? Like, I love my parents. The parents love me so much. My parents love me so much. They would do anything. They would just, pledge their life for the welfare of their child. So that is not coming from a point of, a monetary gain or a positional gain for them. Likewise, I love the game as much as I love my parents or love my children. So if I have to be relevant, and if something is pulling me back, that's just a very natural extension. Even now, my wife makes fun of me. If she makes anything, if my parents make anything, even if the food doesn't have salt, anything, or if it's short of anything, I wouldn't say one thing, I would eat and leave. Because I've developed a taste bud such that I could have anything and only anything that will make me survive for the day. I have not really looked at it as a point of sacrifice at all. So I've sacrificed my food, I've sacrificed my lifestyle, I've trained doubly harder, and yet I would never be a Virat Kohli. And that is something that I made peace with, because that's his journey and this is my journey. And for me, not being naturally athletic is something that's stuck as a tag with me all through my life. But it's never It's never stopped me from working hard on it and stay relevant in the game. For me, staying relevant, to be able to put myself on the ground and exhibit my skill, has been at the forefront, and I have never really seen it as a sacrifice. It's been an absolute journey of pleasure and joy.
Innovation as a bowler, how did that come about? Like developing your variations like a carom ball, various other things. How did all that start?
So the start of it came from one fine day when my father came and asked me, "Hey, this guy Ajanta Mendis, yeah, he's bowling all these carom balls, but all your friends who play tennis ball cricket with you tell me that you do it very well." I said, "Yeah," but my father hated me playing tennis ball cricket. He believed that playing that would affect my cricket badly. He came and asked me, and I said, "Yeah, I can do it." I said, "Why don't you do it with a cricket ball?" The very next day, I turned up at the Tamil Nadu Nets where you were the coach, and I started bowling it to Vijay and Dinesh and Badri. And I got walloped. And you, as you might remember me, if you don't, I'll just remind you. So I got walloped. People were, treating those balls with disdain. And then you pulled me aside and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm trying to bowl this carom ball, sir. I bowl it very well with a tennis ball." And again, like I said, the right amount of advice and the right amount of, knowledge transferred is very important at the right time. And you said it was very easy for you to say, in my nets or in my Ranji Trophy session or in my team, I don't want people who want to bowl this ball, just bowl your stock off spin. But you rather said, it's somebody else's time and you're spoiling somebody else's batting time. So you take another net and try and bowl it separately if you want to do it. So don't do it in the nets unless and until you're confident of delivering it on length. So that's where it all started. However, I think necessity is the mother of all evils and all gains. So I felt ever since that day, like I mentioned to you about how my career could go down or it could really take off. I felt every single time I found myself in a corner, or I was going to find myself in a corner as a cricketer with my career or with my bowling or with my batting, I sensed it 6 months to 12 months ahead. Sometimes I've been able to, curtail it and, arrest the slide. But sometimes I've not been able to. But nevertheless, I've never fallen short of making an effort towards trying to control it. I wanted to stay ahead of the curve because in these last 15 years or 16 years or 17 years or whatever that I played professional cricket, I felt I've never stayed the same. I can't even associate myself today with the person that I was in 2005 when I broke into the first class team. I've changed as a person and as a cricketer quite drastically, and that has been only because of what I've managed to ascertain from the game about how quickly this game has gone ahead. It has changed in the face of it. The last 2 decades of this game has changed every single year, especially after 2010. So I've had to see it. I've had to embrace it rather than complain and say, hey, you know what, this guy is getting the benefit or this guy is doing that, or I'm getting lesser chances than X, Y, or Z. I've never resorted to that sort of sulking. I've constantly said, okay, I am not good enough. I'm not catching up fast enough with the game, and it's my responsibility. So innovation is an extension of my attitude to stay ahead of the game's ever-changing landscape.
As you are innovating, you would also found resistance because doing things differently or doing different things is not really seen as something positive in this neck of the woods, isn't it?
I would think it's changing, but I'm so glad that I was at the forefront of those changes. I still remember in 2016, 17, 2016, 17, I was the cricketer of the year. Somehow, I mean, I get a hang of these negative vibes. It might be with respect to people, it might be respect to what's happening in the game. And 2016, 17, after I got the ICC Cricketer of the Year award, we were leaving to the Champions Trophy in 2017. I played only 3 games in the Champions Trophy. First few games I didn't play. But before I left for the tour, I still remember that tour because as soon as I reached England, my grandfather passed away. A very sort of a important moment for me. I still remember I couldn't be there for him for his demise. I told my wife before leaving to the tournament, and I told another friend of mine who used to be at the academy, he still works with me. I told him I had started bowling leg spin in the nets by then. And he asked me, "Why are you doing this? You're the top of the world, man. You're the cricketer of the year." I said, for different people, there are different yardsticks, and I cannot sit on laurels. If I don't master my leg spin and start delivering different varieties, I could find myself out of the white ball scheme of things. And and he was like, I think he said, "Hey, you're just mad, man. I don't understand your journey." And he left. I told the same to my wife, and my wife is, I think you're overthinking it. Why are you doing it? Believe it or not, in 8 months' time, my wife came up to me and said, what is it? Did somebody tell you? I said, nobody told me. It's just the feeling that I got. And I just think the game is running at that pace. There are people who might not get shot in this journey, right? It's like going into a war, Some civilians die, some people at the forefront of the war die, but the civilians cannot complain because the war brings no good news. And I could be a civilian who could get shot, another civilian could benefit. Likewise, I found the game in a very changing position at that point of time, and I got shot. And I got shot pretty badly. It was a very huge setback in my life. And as a response to that, I continued my journey. My journey had started well before that, but I continued on the journey of wanting to innovate. And when I bowled a lot of leggies, tried googlies and all that, I found new avenues to improve with my carom ball, with my other skill, with my angles. I learned a lot out of it. But when I went and bowled 24 balls of leg spin in the IPL, I succeeded a few times and I had bad games on a few times. I heard people talking about how I lost my head around, being desperate to get back or trying to answer critics, which I found very funny because it had never hit my head that I wanted to answer anyone. I don't want to live for anybody else, because I found that as the necessity at that point of time. All those people that made fun of me, there was only one or two people who sent me a message saying it requires a lot of courage. God be with you. We are with you. And it's so inspiring to see. There were only few people who said that, but largely so many people who came and told me that you have to work on your stop ball. And I used to be furious hearing that. And at the end of the curve, today, when I'm sitting in 2024, I'm still a very relevant model of the IPL. There are some stats coming around that going around in T20 cricket, I'm probably at the 1-2% of the bowler list who have effective trajectories, change of line, length, and speed. I can very safely say I managed to stay ahead of the curve. Now they don't pick people who are one-dimensional. When they look at a left-arm spinner, they say this left-arm spinner doesn't have the ability to bowl to a left-hander, so we're not picking him. When they look at an off-spinner, they say they can't bowl to a right-hander, so we're not picking him. Even with my batting, I've always wanted to, I'm not a naturally powerful person, like you said, but I've made efforts to make sure my batting is relevant. I'm winning games with the bat in the IPL as a T20 middle order, lower order batter, which to me is one of the greatest success points in my life. And I would always look back at those things and say, hey, you know what? I've managed to stay ahead of the curve. Despite people pulling me down, I've held on to my own and showed the pathway to a lot of other people in the future. So these are things I'd be proud of, not necessarily the wickets and the runs that I've made.
Your propensity to innovate, did it make many feel that you're a difficult person to handle?
I think it continues to do so for a lot of people. And like I said, initially when people used to feel that way about me, a lot of taglines came. A lot of people used to say, you can't talk to him, man. I mean, it's very difficult to talk to him because he has an answer for everything. The point they all refuse to understand, whereas I've made peace with that, is I understand another person's journey. Without naming people, I have made peace with the fact that this is my journey and this need not be necessarily somebody else's journey. When I have made peace with that and when I can understand another person's journey, the vice versa hasn't happened, but it's starting to happen. I can feel that starting to happen now because we are at the fag end of the curve. So people are understanding me a lot more, a lot better right now. And I also think I have learned how to communicate with people and make them understand where I'm coming from. Because the reason, if somebody came and told me something, gave me a feedback, I would answer them instantaneously because I understood my trade inside out. Because I was the one experimenting it and I had answers. My belief came from the fact that if I don't have conversations, I cannot get answers from another person. So I would initiate conversations. Eventually, my understanding at the end of the curve is that not everybody enjoys a conversation. They feel threatened. They feel challenged. So they don't enjoy it. I need to find different ways of extracting answers from people. So I would say the last 4 or 5 years of my journey has been a lot better from that perspective, because I know how to pick my battles, who to have conversations with, who not to have certain conversations with. I started understanding people a lot more, whereas the first half of my journey was all about getting excellent, getting better, one-dimensional, go forward, try to be innovative and all that, not necessarily understand people's psyche, which I'm a lot better at right.
For the clarity of viewers, what you are trying to say is this. curiosity is important for you to succeed, for anyone to succeed. Whereas the adage is rather curiosity kills the cat. Is that what you're trying to say? Curiosity is important.
All I'm trying to say is curiosity has worked for me. Need not necessarily work for another person. I can't ask. Uh, I can't. I just am tied both arms without referring to names. But I've mentioned that to people. I can take the liberty right now to say this person's skill and trait. One person that I'm always envious of. I'm not a jealous person, but I'm very envious of this one person. Not anybody else. You can top the. I mean, the greatest cricketer at this point of time, the most sellable cricketer, the most attractive cricketer to everybody's mind in world cricket today is Virat Kohli. However, the most envious I am of one cricketer is Ravindra Jadeja. Okay. And Ravindra Jadeja's journey and my journey are extremely contrasting. Ravindra Jadeja can put a ball on the same spot day in and day out and be extremely athletic on field and keep it extremely simple with the bat and be $1 million on most days. I cannot afford to do that. For some reason, for a long time, I couldn't express this to him, but I found a way to express this to him. I think there is this constant tussle even between us about who is even better than the other. But the fact is, we don't exist without one another. Without Jadeja, there is no Ashwin. Without Ashwin, there is no Jadeja. But it doesn't take away from the fact that he is extremely good at keeping it very simple and not overthinking it or not be curious. He does something very effectively that I cannot do it. I cannot put the ball in the same spot or back like how I do if I don't be curious and if I don't innovate. He cannot be who he is if he's constantly overthinking it. So these are classic cases of people playing similar traits and finding success in their own ways. So I would think curiosity worked for me, but need not necessarily be everyone's cup of tea. Because for the first 20, 25 years is your formative years. People are taught to live life differently. So when you're suddenly 23, 24, 25, I cannot build curiosity in another person and they cannot make it simple for me. So it's all about trying to teach children to be curious at a young age and not clip them from asking questions. My environment was very supportive of me asking questions and being curious. Need not necessarily be everybody's cup of tea.
Now, let me ask you another interesting question here. Has intelligence been an advantage always to you?
Intelligence has served me well. I'm very glad for what it's given me. I think without exhibiting my intelligence, I might have accomplished a lot more laurels. If I reflect upon it, if I hadn't exhibited my intelligence in certain places, I might have not, put people in a little bit of a insecure or a threatening position. And it might have served me well in terms of getting some more laurels. Which is again a maturity and a journey I had to go through. Because when I did exhibit my intelligence, my intention was not to exhibit it. My intention was to have a very engaging conversation with that person, which turned sour. And for me, I'm very happy. Like I said, I'm totally comfortable in my skin. And if somebody gave me another chance to live those 20 years all over again, the only change I would make is pick and choose what to say when to whom, and what to ask when to who. These are the only two things I would change with maturity. But I'm completely otherwise happy with the way I've lived my life and how my intelligence has served me. Because without my intelligence or curiosity, I would have lost interest in playing this game. So that's the sole, essence of me having played this game for this long, this amount of time. There is scope for it. But whether it's affected or impacted me in certain ways at different stages of my career, yes. But that happens in any corporate and any corporate employee's journey, and I'm no different.
What would you tell a young spinner who feels he is not used well by his captain or who does not enjoy the confidence of his captain?
What is the age of this young spinner?
Spinners, if you're talking, in terms of the conventions and the beliefs, you would say even a 30-year-old is young. But
no, because I
say a guy who's looking to transit from the junior to the senior level.
Yeah, like I said, right? I just made that point a little while earlier. There is a very popular phrase in Tamil. I'm sure it says if you don't cultivate something at 5, you don't cultivate something at 50. I'm seeing both ends of the spectrum. I have young children and I have elderly parents. Both are very similar. Both are children in my views. But if I tell my daughter, you cannot do this, my daughter's response is, why, daddy? But if I tell my parents, don't do this, their response is, I know better than you. Why are you advising me? So it's the same thing. The same thing. They both are very similar in nature, but it's the experience that's costing this difference in answer. My parents are 50 or 60 years of experience, and they don't want to listen to your advice. They want you to be more, more appreciative of who they are. So if I had to tell a 30-year-old spinner, I would ask him to have a conversation with the captain as to what the captain is expecting out of him. That is me enriching his experience and enhancing his career. But if you ask me if it's a 15-year-old spinner, I would not tell him to have a conversation with his captain or please his captain or have a better relationship with his captain. I would ask him what or where he's lacking and improve his skill. So to me, there are 2-3 non-negotiables as a spinner, as a 15-year-old, which is getting your line, length, and pace absolutely right and experimenting with it all the time. You must experiment with angles, you must experiment with different actions, you must experiment with different positions of release. All this is absolutely essential for a 15 or a 14-year-old 14-year-old spinner, because at that age, cause and effect. If I release the ball at this point, it's going to give this effect. If I release the ball here, it's going to give this effect. If I grip the ball differently, it's going to give this effect. So I would absolutely unravel all my toys with a much younger spinner and allow them to explore more options, because when he or she becomes a 25-year-old in a professional environment, they must have all these tools to be able to deal with it themselves. But a 25, 30-year-old spinner needs my support emotionally, needs more tactical news here and there, because there is not a lot in terms of how much they can change. This is just my thought.
To all the captains out there, how do they get the best out of a spinner?
Confidence, because at a professional level, when you're playing the IPL or for India or for a first class team, I still think is a very formative place. There is a lot of scope to learn your trade and learn your trade there. But I think a captain needs to make sure that he instills a lot of confidence in his spinner. For example, my first captain was Badrinath when I played first class cricket, and the first thing he would say is, "Do not get cut or cover driven. But if somebody hits you over the top, I'm very happy." He would give me another over when people hit me over the top. But if I got cut, he'd stop my bowling from that end. So these are very early lessons I had. I think somewhere or the other, the captains need to be more understanding of the skill of a particular spinner, which is where I think someone like Rohit Sharma stands out. He was a bowler, right? He had bowled. He had plied his trade for a bit. So he understands bowling. He understands executional failings on a particular day. He understands field setting. He understands tactics. He'll understand where a bowler is coming from. When a bowler is, worried about getting hit. When a bowler is worried about, having extra dew on that ball. So that empathy comes from having plied the trade. So I think it's a very funny way of saying this, but if you want to be a good captain of a good spinner, I would say you must have bowled a bit of spin and must have bowled at some stage of your life to have a reasonable understanding. And secondly, you must have a fair amount of empathy for what a bowler's life looks like. So I think these two are very, very critical. And both names that I mentioned, Badrinath and Rohit, they both have plied spin at some stage. They've bowled spin at some stage of their lives and picked up wickets.
Finally, a word of advice for all the aspiring young cricketers.
Advice is an absolutely con term, sir. You know it better than me. Advising is something, when you advised 15 or 30 members in a Tamil Nadu team, maybe 5 or 6 were taking it well, 24, 23 didn't. Now I think if you advise 30 people, 35 don't want it. Advice is a very wrong term. Once upon a time, I felt coaching came first and relationships were built next. But now I feel if you don't build a relationship, you can't coach anybody. Build trust and then coach somebody. That's the mantra in this particular day and age. So you need to build trust with the young ones and then probably tell them the right things at the right time for them to make best use of them. If I had to tell one thing to a young mind that came my way in my academy or anywhere, I would say be ready to experiment, because parents today see cricket as a very important career for children. They look at it as a career option, and they're very aggressive about it. So what's gone out of the window is the amount of fun the child has. I think between the age of 7, 8, or 9 or 10, when a child starts playing cricket, till about 15, 16 is about having fun. It's not about playing for Tamil Nadu or playing for your state under 14. There are at least 20, 25 kids that play under 14 state for Tamil Nadu, and they never see the daylight of it. They don't play Ranji Trophy at all. So I think what happens is you enable the child to think wider when you allow them to have fun. There is no pressure of performance on them when they are at that age. It's about having a lot of fun. Only when you have fun does the mind goes into the job that they're doing. You want the child to go to a cricket ground and have a lot of fun and experiment. They must bowl fast, they must bowl spin, they must bowl underarm, they must throw the ball, they must hit the ball left-handed, right-handed, have a lot of fun at that particular age. And I would tell every single child that comes my way to have a lot of fun and experiment. When they experiment and have a lot of fun, they will go on to have the tools to be able to apply all these things in their career much later on if they become good cricketers.
Thank you, Ashwin. It is, as usual, very stimulating talking to you, and many thanks for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you.